There were kind of three things that kind of really motivated the origin of the story. Number one is just something that I'm very interested right now in storytelling is just playing around with structure and sort of the unfolding of a story for an audience and kind of playing around with that structure. Number two, it's kind of a response to, I feel that, now that we've been many generations of film goers, that films have become quite predictable, especially for a film-savvy audience. And something that I appreciate most when I see films today are those that surprise me. And so I was hoping to create something that, that the audience would think would be one thing, but then it would become something else. Every time you would think you would have a grasp of the story, it would become something else and sort of have this unfolding process. But though, once you got to the end, you felt it was still justified and not kind of, like intentionally like fixed that way. And number three was just sort of, I'm always trying to, again, deal with sort of a subject matter I haven't seen before. And so my writing partner and I, we kind of, I can't really remember how, but I came up with this idea of never really seen a film about this condition called Munchausen by proxy before, which if you're not familiar with it, is generally something that happens in young mothers where they will harm or intentionally make their children sick in order to gain sympathy and attention for themselves. So it was kind of about taking these two different women who suffer from slightly different versions of that condition, but have completely different lives and sort of polar opposite personalities, and that, but because they share this condition, they would sort of fill this void in each other's lives.
Okay. I believe Eminem's mom has that condition, apparently. So, because it's really disorienting and deliberately so to kind of have the audience lose their sense of where they are in the story. Initially, you're kind of not sure where the main character is, and then you're not sure where you are with the main character. And then the main character is gone because she's not necessarily the main character. Were there points when you were writing the screenplay where you were, how did you get feedback in terms of how far can you bend the audience without breaking them and keeping them lured into the storyline?
Right. It was the sense that, that I feel that, again, for audiences I think that have become quite savvy, that you would use these moments that would generally, foreshadowing that would generally foreshadow something else. And it was sort of, as we were writing it, every time we got into the script and got into a portion of it where we as the audience would know where this was going, that's when we knew we needed to change it, and just keep ourselves sort of surprised, but still, again, not lose what the overall arc of the story is.
Okay. Does anyone in the house have something they'd like to ask? Feelings they'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd like to make a statement about what the film was saying to me. To me, this film is primarily about women who are not satisfied with their role as women. That to me is what you're talking about here. And the man himself, he's a good example of a man who's stuck in the same problems of males being in these terrible roles of being violent people. And he doesn't know how to get out of it except to kill himself, which is another act of violence. So to me, you're making a social commentary of the really rigid roles men and women are stuck in and how hard it is to get out of them.
Right. So you felt that the male character killed himself?
Yeah, that was my sense, that he killed himself in the shower.
That wasn't mine.
He was going to be killed.
Right.
Maybe he hadn't done it yet. Maybe she went up and killed him.
Right.
That's the implication.
Right. There is definitely a bit there, for interpretation. The reason that, like I said, the real sort of, seed of the story came from this condition, and the reason it became sort of a very female-driven film is that we found that this condition generally affects women, and plus, like I said, in terms of dealing with audience expectations and trying to go against those expectations, I'm very interested in sort of gender role reversal, and audiences tend to be less suspicious of women, so I feel like you can sort of, you can suspend those surprises a little bit longer because you tend to be more suspicious of men being the more violent characters, And so it was just trying to do something different and something, and hopefully unique in a way that was going to keep the audience sort of surprised throughout.
Is that a question? A seed of a question starting out there?
I just said you succeeded at that.
You did.
Thank you.
My voice just cracked. I'm glad you're here to share that. Well, I mean, since it's such an intimate gathering of people, you know, does anyone have any further questions?
Well, I have one other comment. Having the gun shown and her falling in the chair, I kind of did expect her to go get the gun and shoot the woman and maybe her husband too. But that was, to me, maybe moving towards predictable.
In terms of towards the end, you mean?
Yeah, at the very end.
Right. I mean, yeah, we're definitely setting up the gun in the kitchen, you know, so that you know it's there later for her. In terms of, well, I mean,
I feel it would have been less predictable if you had let the woman she killed go through with what she was planning to do, because that wouldn't be expected. Actually, we would, as an audience, I think we would expect her to be stopped because she's such a representative of something that's not acceptable. That to let her succeed would be really counter to what we expect. That's my feeling as an audience.
what you mean with the Annika character for her to succeed?
Yeah, the woman who comes to the door, the woman whose lover is killed, or whose
Right.
companion is killed. Yeah. If
Right.
she had succeeded, that would have been surprising for me.
Oh, okay. Because I mean, I often feel that when I see a film, that generally the person who is the most evil or perceived by the audience being the most evil is usually the one that is beat in the end or is defeated in the end. So I kind of felt that Melanie was sort of, you know, of all of the characters, sort of the most damaged, both, you know, mentally. And so that's why I kind of wanted to, as a change, see her come out on top. Or at least, you know, for the time being, see that she comes out on top.
Yeah, I get what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, like, again, like, sort of seeing the news footage at the end, you know, like, again, we kind of accept as audiences, we've seen that before, where we see a jump to a year later, 2 years later, you know, and see the news feature kind of, you know, covering the story that's happened. And that's why, you know, again, I wanted to then go back and, you know, let you know that was really just a fantasy in her mind of what she hopes the future will bring. But then you bring us back into reality, and we're not exactly sure where this is all going to lead.
Realism. You start with a scene in a hospital, and pretty close to the beginning, and you get this sense of that you're seeing something that's realistic, and then you use one scene, fantasy torture scenes from the bathtub, taking downstairs and doing things.
Right.
How did you rationalize that in your sort of mental?
Well, even the way that each story, you know, because I feel like, you know, as a filmmaker, I like to have each character's story told in a different way through you know, their sort of singular perspective. And, you know, I definitely feel like it's almost kind of two movies. It's almost kind of a movie and its sequel. But, you know, with the male character, with Joe's character, Patrick, I really kind of just wanted to use almost an expressionistic kind of, you know, point of view from him so that we can really visualize this rage that he's going through and this grief that he's going through. And so, I don't know, it just seemed interesting to me to actually get a sort of a glimpse inside of his psyche a bit like what we do with Melanie at the end with the news footage. You know, just kind of get a glimpse inside. And that's why, you know, like, you know, again, like, it was a risk because, you know, you see him come out of the basement and he sort of has this blood splattered on him, and then he goes outside and there's no blood on him. You know, then when he comes back in, it's back on him again. So I know that, you know, that they could be perceived as a continuity error, and we try to put little, like, sound design cues in there where there's, like, a ringing in the ear when we see him inside, you know. But again, it's like those are sort of the cues we were trying to use to show that this is fantasy, this is reality, and this is him just sort of working through this rage-filled grief that he's going through. It just sort of seemed more interesting to me.
Yeah, and the whole sequence that kind of splits the movie in half, where there's the confrontation in the bathroom featuring your son, actually,
Right.
and it gets really heightened and stylized in a way that the violence initially is really stark and sort of like brutally matter of fact, and then it gets like real dreamlike in that sequence to sort of ease the transition between the two stories, which I think is really effective. That was not a question. Does anyone have any more questions? We could have a miniature Q&A out in the lobby as well, as you guys pick up your proxy lip balm on the way out, if you'd like. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming, and thank our filmmaker for being here, for getting through to work. This is late, guys, so way to go. Thank you so much for being here.